Ladies, and welcome to Homemakers Radio. I hope you get a few things done while you're listening. Sometimes it's just nice to have a little company while you go, something that you don't have to actually watch so you can actually get something done. I have my favorite things. Unfortunately, a lot of things that I enjoy are things I also have to stop and look at or stop and watch. So I've created this just to listen. But before you go about your day at home, I want to show you my teacup. It's not exciting, but it has a little bit of a raised embossed pattern. It's getting dark here. I waited so late to come that I don't know if you can see it, and I will try to get a picture of it for you. And it's from Grace Eileen's Reserve, and that was from Home Goods. I can't read what it is. It's too small. And but anyway, I really like this cup. It's my everyday teacup. And in the background, you can see that I've made some satin pumpkins because mine didn't grow too well this year, so I wanted to have some for this season. And today I want to, everybody's asking what's going on here in Oregon with the smoke and the fire. Well, on Monday, this is Sunday, on Monday last, the sky was absolutely red. It was so red that we could not see anything. Couldn't see the road, the car, the tree, anything around us. And inside was dark. There was no daylight all day long and a total red sky. And the next day it got a little more yellow. The smoke was terrible. It smelled like I can't describe the smell exactly, but it wasn't like a pleasant campfire smoke or one of those smoky candles you get that reminds you of the fireplaces. Nothing like that. It didn't smell like cedar. It just smelled pretty bad. It's like when you have a grass fire or something is wet and it's burning too. And anyway, it's not very pleasant, and it's come into the house. Unfortunately, smoke seems to be attracted to the inside of the house. Sometimes the outside will clear up and the inside is still smoky. It's kind of stinging my eyes. We are on farmland, so we're not near the forest, but we do have trees, and I'm keeping my lawn watered and wet, and hopefully we can get through this. It's supposed to be blowing over to the west, to the coast, but then we got some interference from some other fires going this way and that, and politically, I'll have to tell you, you probably never would have thought that an act of nature, such as a fire or a flood or something else, would have anything to do with politics, but it does. And it has a lot to do with mismanagement. It has a lot to do with, for example, one thing that politicians will do is when they want money for something, they will cut back on something else. And in some cases, even levees are opened up so that it floods the area because they claim there was no money to fix the levee or to maintain it. The other thing with fires is we all grew up, didn't you, back in the olden days when some of the forestry personnel would come into the schools and give lectures and show films and slides on what forestry was all about and talk about their equipment and try to interest the children in maybe becoming, getting a career in forestry. And they would show us many things about it. There were movies back in the 1950s about early forestry. It's about managing the forests. And you know, the Bible said in Genesis, right after man was created, that man was supposed to subdue the earth and replenish it. Well, here in Oregon, they try to, when they log off a hill, they'll replant it. And one of the reasons that we're supposed to subdue it is because when I was growing up on a homestead in Alaska, that was all forest up there. And one of the things that our fathers did, take us with them, and they would clear out the brush in between the trees. And then they would mark some of the trees to be chopped down to thin them and make them further apart. Well, the problem with politics is there is money for forestry, but it was redirected, and some of the helicopters that have the big water tanks were taken somewhere else or, sent overseas. And so there's just mismanagement. There shouldn't be these fires. There should have Also, there's way too much BLM land. That's land that's, I guess, government land. It means Bureau of Land Management. There's way too much of it, and we don't need more acreage set aside just to save for forests or parks, because that is potential fuel that can burst into flame. Many trees have a lot of oil in them, and really you can't manage some of it if it's too far away and it's too thick. And there's enough land, I live around it, there's enough land that people could homestead. They could, if they would open up this BLM land, they could homestead. Young families could start having acreage and run farms, or even sawmills, and create lumber. There's enough, and it's not like they're going to strip the land and it won't be anything. There's plenty, because they replant, and we really need to free up a lot of the government land. That's what we call BLM land. When you get a map, oh goodness, I forgot my maps today. I was going to give you a lesson in maps. Well, maybe I could just talk about it. On the maps are little symbols. Where if you look at the legend, now a legend on a map is which tells you the code. You know, this red line means so many miles, and this blue line means it's a state highway, and this here X means this. This means a place that you can stop, and this means that this is BLM land where you can camp out for free. On BLM land, you can go and hike and camp for free. And but there's so much of it, and it's so hard to manage if you don't have the equipment. Now, money has been set aside in most places for this equipment to dig the fire breaks and make ditches, and there's just so much about it that was taken care of in the past, but the money was redirected. And so many of you people that get all upset about who the president is need to be more careful about who the mayor is, and who the governor is, and who all the politicians of your state are, who are pilfering money from infrastructure and maintenance and sanitation, and letting the state decay, or letting the city decay. You need to know who these people are. You need to know who your mayor is, who your city manager is, and who the city council members are. I think those are elected too. You need to know who they are and what they believe, and whether they're taking money and redirecting it. Some of these people live, nobody knows where they live. Nobody knows who they are. And they were all happy to be quiet, and nobody knows what they're up to until just a while ago, when some of their money was cut off for things that shouldn't be spent on, and they started to take the money from other areas. But you need to be more concerned about who your local sheriff is, and who you're electing in your local. These people, and your judges. Find out who they are, where they live, and what they believe. See if you can get on a website. See if you can correspond with them. They all are hiding, because they don't care who the president is from every 4 years. They don't care, because to them, as long as you leave them alone and it's business as usual, and they can get all these kickbacks and pilfer money off of the bills that they pass, and they don't really care about, foreign aid or welfare, because they're just getting a great deal of money off of that and enriching themselves. You also need to be careful not to be so hyper about who the president is, and be so upset about who the president is. The president can't shut your electricity off. Your president can't shut your water off. The president can't come and lock the house up and kick you out. You need to know who's in the waterworks, who's in the public utilities. Those people are sometimes elected, but even if they're appointed, you need to know who they are, and you need to see an accounting of where the money is going for these things, and just if there's some kind of dishonesty going on. But this is the trouble with the fires, is mismanagement. There's no reason for them to be so close and to be so frequent and getting worse every year. That shows mismanagement of the forest, and there are a lot of people know about this here in Oregon. There are ways to manage the forest so that the fire doesn't leap across from field to field, and there are ways to manage this, but the equipment has been cut off, or the money has been cut off that provides the hired people that will go and do that. And So there's a lot of things to do with politics, and that's why I say pay attention to your local. When you go to vote this year, have a look at that ballot and pay attention to who these people are and look them up if you can. Find out a little about them. Sometimes they don't even reveal what they believe politically, and they just get elected year after year after year, and nothing improves, and the cities start to decay. That's not right. But so that is, if you want to know more about it, go to today's X22 report, the political, and I'll try to put a link there, but they can explain it better than I do, and we talk about it a lot at home. Probably not quite as accurate as this guy does, but I'll put that link there for you. And it has nothing to do with whether a person is liberal or conservative, Republican or Democrat. It's just plain stealing and cheating and causing a lot of this trouble. Like I said, some of the floods and some of the other disasters that go on are caused by maintenance money being taken away or equipment. And so that's why I say pay attention to who these local people are, and just get somebody else in if you possibly can. Now, I think I need to start back before this. Anyway, we're fine. We're just not breathing as well, and our eyes are stinging, and there's no visibility out there. The air is supposed to be blowing over towards the coast, but it got interfered with by another gust of smoke from another direction, so it's swirling around here. So what we usually do here at Homemakers Radio is it's something you can listen to while you go, and I have it in 3 sections, and I kind of had a 4th section too where I was homeschooling you. I don't care how old you are. This Homemakers Radio is not for a person of a certain age. It's not for people over 50, over 40, over 30, over 70. It's for everybody, because when you've been a homeschooler, you realize that the young and the old interact together. And the Bible does distinguish 2 kinds of people. There's the older and the younger, but it also says each one of them has a role. And guess what? That role to the older is to minister to the younger, and the role of the younger is to help the older. And so they interact. So we can't say this is video for people over a certain age. And if you're a young girl at home and looking after your parents and their house until you get married, then this is for you too. And this will help get you started. Now first, what we do is we take care of our preparation. I call it prep on my list. And that's to take care of your appearance. And why should you do that? Well, because it helps you to get on track. You know, speaking of track, an athlete competes with himself when the athletes are practicing, they're competing with their own record. And an athlete will want to beat the record from the day before, run faster than the record the day before, lift more weight than from the day before. And so when you get dressed, when you take care of your appearance, it puts you on track. And you can also, you know, just do a little better than the day before, and stretch yourself a little bit, and never let your mind go into atrophy. Never lose your zeal and your enthusiasm for life. I think there was a word I looked up. I know what it was. I was looking at a word the other day, and it was called increase. And I went to the New Testament to look it up, and it was just amazing how the Apostle Paul wanted the Christians to increase in good character, increase in love, increase in zeal. And so never ever let your mind fall into apathy. You know what? There's a lady I know that has a watch that if she sits too long, she's got a timer on it, so if she sits too long, this watch will make a little sound, and then it prompts her to get up, and she'll walk around. She lost quite a weight just getting up and walking around. And you know what we need? We need a watch like that for apathy. An anti-apathy watch, and you wear it around your wrist or your ankle, and when you fall into this these apathetic mood and apathetic thought, and you lose your zeal, that it will ring. I'm always thinking of these great inventions. Maybe I'll amount to something someday. What do you think? So we can do, in our preparation, we can create more efficiency, and also it's a way of getting on track to face the day. And so the other thing you can do is pray for your day. Have you ever thought about that? Pray for your day. And when you start praying for your day, you'll find out that you have a lot to look forward to, and a lot to live up to. When you pray for your day, if some kind of achievement, or maybe just having a carefree day or a day without too much stress or strife, you have something to live up to. So try to pray for your day. Now, homemaking is especially important when the world has gone wonky. It really is. That is a place where you can control things. You can't control what's going on in the world. And remember when I told you that when the state has created a crisis for you, don't think that when it's over, things will settle down, because they will think of something worse. They will think of a way to make you even more miserable. And I told you the politicians in the states they are narcissists. A narcissist is only happy when someone else is miserable. They're making someone else miserable. And so when I said to you, if you think that they're going to settle down after a while, after they've kind of put the world on hold, don't worry, they'll find something else to make you miserable. They'll put out a terrible movie to make everybody upset, or they'll put out a terrible book, or they will create some kind of poison in the air. They will do whatever they can to destroy, because they're all about destruction. Now, the other day, I read to you out of the Little Mommy book, and everybody liked that so much. If you haven't got one, I hope you can get one at your local store, because I noticed on the web that the price is really high on some of those older little golden books, especially the really pretty ones, and the ones with that art by Eloise, someone, I'm trying to think of who it was. Beautiful. The Little Mommy book was so important because as homemakers, it was showing the book, in reading it to someone, would show them how to play. And the play was actually enjoying work, because first she got her children up and she washed them, and then she created a lunch for them, and then she swept the floor, and then she washed the dishes. It was how to play, teaching children how to play, what to do with them when they play. And if you don't have a little play kitchen, I always wanted a play kitchen and a playhouse, and I never had it, but we used to turn a cardboard box upside down, and our father would draw the stove and the sink on it, and we played and played and played with those. And there are ways to make a little kitchen. And another thing you can do if you don't have a kitchen to play with for children or grandchildren is you take a long piece of cloth or cardboard and you draw the kitchen on it, and then you have a portable one that you can lay on a table and play with. And you can buy different toy dishes and pots and pans. Now, when I got to education last time, I forgot to tell you that when the idea of home education which is what I'm doing for you right now, the idea of home education is not to fill your head full of figures and facts. It's not. The whole idea is, the aim is not to memorize dates when Washington was born and when England's first king and all that. That's not the aim of it. The aim of it is, remember the poem I read to you, hurry the baby fast as you can, hurry him, worry him, make him a man, off with his baby clothes into his pants, feed him on brain food and make him advance, fill his poor head full of figures and facts, keep on a-jamming them in till it cracks. What good do all those figures and facts do anybody? What homeschooling was all about was, we were saying, well, hey, let's take these figures and facts and use them only if they can help him in real life and give life meaning to him, give meaning to them. It's how it's not always about knowledge as far as figures and facts. It's about knowledge of how to find something, how to find knowledge, how to find out about something, how to find out. Have you ever lost something? How do you tell your children how to find something? They come out of the room and they can't remember why they came out, or they lost something. How do you help them find it? You go back to where you first had it, or you go back to where you first missed it, and kind of slow down for a little bit, and pretty soon you remember, or you found it. And so it's teaching them the knowledge of how to figure out things, how to develop things, how to, most children are alert and happy and very, very smart, and very smart at figuring out things before they go to school. And after they go to school, not so much, because their minds are more dulled. Well, homeschooling is all about how to keep that sharpness, how to keep that vigor and that zeal and that love of life. That's what it is. Put the love of life into your child. And so that's what I'm trying to do here with education. So it's for everybody. I don't care how old you are. Now, one thing about education you have to understand is there's a misunderstanding about what it was for. The Bible doesn't use the word education at all. It talks about knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and good judgment. And that's what we want to do with ourselves and with our children. And education, unfortunately, it was in secular education often portrayed as something that's going to make life better and better. But the idea was spread that if you got an education, mankind would get better and better through education. But we only know that mankind can thrive and survive through God's Word and through God. But education likes to take the place of God and of church and of our faith. They have it all set up, don't they? You get children of the same age in a classroom, and they're all supposed to develop at the same rate, and one size fits all, despite whether they're interested or not. And one thing that we like to do in homeschooling is develop their interest. If they're not interested in something, if you've got some kind of a textbook that you love to teach your children, but they don't seem to be interested, or if you've ordered some kind of curriculum and you don't like it and it makes you yawn, just put it away. You might grow into it later, but don't stick to something you can't stand. Don't stick to something that you're bored with or that the children are bored with. And I only try to read you things that make me happy, and that usually if something makes the mother happy and she's interested in it, the children might be more interested in it. But don't copy what the public schools do. They have certain textbooks that are not, they are devoid of understanding of God's Word and of the heart of the child. And so it's interesting how different it is. And that's why I like to reveal what is in our homeschool books. So take the mystery out of it for some of you that wonder what it's all about. You might think it's just like holding up in the house and we're just staying home and it's only the family, but it isn't. It's all about how to get along with people too. It's all about having the chance to teach your children good health habits and good manners, cleaning up after themselves, being polite in the home, being polite to one another. Because if you can learn to be polite to one another in the home, it's going to come naturally to you when you meet other people, when you see other people. And one of the problems I see coming out of the colleges by the time a person is finished with college, they've been in the institutions for about 14 years of their lives. And they've developed some bad thought habits, bad thinking habits. They have decided that they can be as mean and rotten as they want themselves and at home, but when company comes in, they put on a new face. But if you teach children from the heart to be kind and loving to each other, to their family, to their parents, to their brothers and sisters, then it's not going to be hard. It's going to be natural to them to be that way polite to other people outside of the home. So the education won't change your your bad attitude, unless it's the right kind of education, unless it's centered on Christian principles, which is what we try to show you here. And that a good education won't change your laziness. It won't change your bad habits. It won't change your bad attitudes unless it is centered on the love one another principles of the Word of God. And I wanted to talk to you about developing your thoughts. Children can get very negative and depressed and start to nurture some of these negative thoughts and bad thinking. That thoughts can affect your health. This is so interesting because when you have a negative thought, I can't think of a better word for that, but you know, God was always hard on people, especially in the Old Testament, who came back with a bad report that didn't have a can-do spirit. And so we have to fight that all the time. It's just easier to sink down than it is to rise up, and it's easier to sink down into morbid thoughts and thoughts of we can't do it. And it really is distressing to hear even Christians say, well, you know, it's never been good and it never will be good. And what a terrible way to think, especially for someone. I can't thrive in an atmosphere like that because I've got things to do. And things that I want to accomplish. I have a whole list of things that I want to do. I don't want to think like that. But your thoughts can affect your health, and you'll find that these negative people have got some health problems. And I was listening to an exercise class that I attend. You know, I attend all these classes. I have all these appointments, and so I changed into my exercise clothes, and I went to my exercise room, and I went to my class online. And the teacher was saying that a lot of our stiffness in our bodies come from the way we think. And it's so true, because if you have rigid thinking, you start to hold your breath a little bit. You start to seize, your muscles start to seize up a little bit just because of your thoughts. So can you imagine how much healthier we could be if we had proper thinking and proper thoughts? And I do believe that if you'll read some very pointed instruction in the New Testament, especially in the letters like Ephesians and 1st and 2nd Timothy and all this, where the Apostle Paul, although he would, and Christ in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, although he would say something very pointed to his disciples or to his disciples, and he might chastise them, in the end he was saying, but you can do better. You can increase in this. And so I think that we could all come out of the other side of this. You know, they call it a shutdown, but you don't have to have your mind or your body shut down at all. There's nothing that can stop you from having a good attitude. And this might be a great time to do it. I think a lot of people are going to look back on this year and wish they had used it better, wish they had taken the time to do something that made their life have some progress. And so we can come out on the other side stronger, mentally, physically, and spiritually, and we can come out the other side with more skills. We can be healthier. We come out the other side healthier. And I know that I've got those goals myself. And I love to go to my exercise class. I love to go to my art class. I've got a wall now filled with, it's not in this room, but filled with my paintings. And I'm still a novice, but at least I'm doing it, and it's such a pleasure. And then I have my cooking class, so I have a lot to look forward to. And of course, I have my sewing over there in that corner that I want to finish. And so now I want to go on to how exercise can help alleviate your stuck thinking. When you move, it releases this stiffness and this tension in your mind and in your brain. And you know, you don't really have to have a class. If you're not used to moving, then why not just move your wrists? Move your wrists for a while, and then move your neck for a little while, and then roll your shoulders, and then move your ankles. If you would just do that. I took one class online that was just sitting. You were sitting exercises while you were sitting, but there was more power in those exercises than people could see. it was very effective exercising. So that is one that I really enjoyed. But you can move without having to have an instructor if you'll get in the habit. The only reason I like the classes is it disciplines me to attend something, and I might just put it off. So now I want to go on to people. I've only been speaking for 30 minutes, but I've got some books for you, so I'll get to read to you today. I want to go on to people. And this is really important because now that we're home more and the family is around us more, we have to learn to get along with one another. And one of the things that we learned, and homeschooling was so valuable that way because you're home together. When the children are away from each other all day and they're in different schools, they're not used to each other. So when they come home, there's conflict. They haven't learned what each other's limits are and what each other's comfort zones are. But when you're home together, you have to get along, and you learn to give each other the freedom to be quiet, to be alone, to concentrate on what you're interested in. And the Bible teaches us to be interested in what the other person is interested in, and to have some respect for what their interests are, and to have sympathy with them, and to want them to succeed. And that was one of the greatest things that we had learned, was let us help one another succeed in our goals. And I started out by saying, well, here's my goals. I'd like to have a clean and tidy house. I'd like to have a cheerful house. I'd like for us to dress nicely. I'd like to have meals at the table, and I'd like to learn nice manners, and I would like to learn how to do speeches and dinner theater, and I would like to learn how to things to laugh at, because I believed that laughter was very good. And I had all my goals, and I would like for us to be polite to one another. And they knew that those were my goals, and so they helped me in those goals. So then each one, I would say, if they were too young to know what their goals were, I would say one thing you need to do is not aggravate this person, not tease them, you want them to have goals too. And if they're happy and they're playing and they're being creative, leave them alone. And this is one thing that families need to learn, because when you live together, you're going to get used to each other, and it's going to be easier. It's when you're gone from each other all the time that there's conflict. So I want to talk a little bit about people that try to thwart you in your goals. You know, sometimes you might just be real open, and maybe it's not in the family, but I'm just thinking in general. Maybe you just want to be open, you're having a conversation with someone, and you say, oh, I'd really like to do such and such someday, and then they start to tell you why it can't be done. Remember that poem, Somebody Said It Couldn't Be Done? And people that try to thwart you, don't let them slow you down. Just do something. If you have a list and someone wants to know what's on your list or what are you doing today, and you tell them, you say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, or you shouldn't be doing that. What you do is you ignore them, because as you ignore their suggestion, you don't let it get inside of you, and you do something you make the list be your boss, not the person, not the other person that's trying to tell you you can't do all that. And you work around them, and you stay completely busy. I think it's really important too, in a family and at home, that you encourage each other. We're supposed to be building one another up and encouraging one another, not tearing one another down. And that goes for everybody in the home. So some people thrive on making other people unhappy. Some people just thrive on it. They just can't live unless they're doing that. They feel like they're stirring up something. And it's always very rude in a conversation. So I want to talk about conversation a little bit, because I think everybody probably can figure out in their own home what they need to do. But there's a conversation habit that we need to correct, and especially when the children are young at home, is to, if they walk in and there are people already conversing, is to size it up. And what that means, you know, when you size something up, you just kind of measure it and kind of eye it and everything. What it means is to see if it will fit something, or to see if it measures up to something else. When you size up a situation, you're going to look at it to think, uh-oh, am I interfering with a conversation that's already been going? Let me find out what it's all about before I say anything. So it's better to listen to see what's going on before you jump in. I'll give you an example. Two people are talking about the weather, and someone says, well, there was a lot of moisture this morning. It was really, it was raining, and the other lady is agreeing, and they're just talking about, how the grass was wet. And so someone walks in on the conversation, hasn't heard what's already gone on, and she says, no, it wasn't raining. And so then ensues some kind of argument. Well, that was not necessary. It would have been better to be quiet and see what the other two were talking about first. And sometimes children have a problem with this. They'll come in the back door, and I call it the back door of the conversation. They come in and people are already talking about something, and they hear a few words and they think they know what it is, and they start to object to it or to correct it. That's another thing that's really, really bad in conversation. It's constant correcting. You can't talk to anybody and have a smooth, interesting conversation where you share information and you enlighten each other and you have a lot of enjoyment from it without there's one person will come in and just correct every single thing and make sure everyone is so accurate. And what I discovered about these kind, and it might not be that way for everyone, but just my experience. And by the way, this whole thing that I'm doing here on videos is just based on my opinion and my experience, and I'm just expressing it because of my freedom of speech. And there is no way that it can fit everybody, and there's no way that you should think that you're going to do it just like I do it. It's just I'm sharing it, and sometimes you'll find that it resonates with you a little bit. But the conversation where someone thinks they know what's going on, and they come in and they say something that totally puts a stop to it all because they didn't understand what was going on, and it kind of cuts everybody off. That's another thing. So contradicting is also bad. Saying the opposite of everything. That's not necessary. There is a time and place for that, which might be explained. And if you have to, in a way, write your own curriculum when you are in a family, because there's no book that will tell you exactly about these kinds of conversation problems. And every generation has problems that come up that the former generation might not have. And I think one of the things that happens a lot today is the constant correcting of someone. People want to be smart. And one thing that I learned when I first started homeschooling from somebody who had already been in it a few years, it kind of took off in the 1980s, but there were some people that had started a little earlier, and this lady was able to tell me something really interesting. She said in school, when we were all in school, when the teacher said, who knows such and such, or do you know, did you know such and such, everybody says yes, whether they knew it or not, because nobody wants to look stupid. They don't want to look like they have no knowledge. And she said that was one habit that they had to change in their home. And we had to change the way we said things. We would have to say, I didn't know that. Could you please tell me more? Because that makes you pliable. That makes you more teachable. That makes you more lovable, actually. She said we have a very bad habit of saying, I know, when maybe we don't. And even if we do, it's just not a friendly, not as friendly to say, I know, to everything. But to say, I would like to know more about that. That's very interesting. I've never considered that. Would you like to tell me more about it? Instead of saying, I know. And she said that's one of the problems with getting a group together to teach in a public school, is that you feel inferior if you can't raise your hand and say, yes, I know, and everybody just kind of, I know. And so we had to learn to quit saying, I know, because most of the time we don't know yet. And I just thought that was interesting. You might be able to translate that in some way to your own life. So anyway, Quarreling, contradictions, and constant corrections are very grating to a conversation. And also, they discourage people. So if you remember, you're supposed to build people up and encourage them. That's a good way to get rid of that. So I think we can come out better in our manners and come out better in our conversation skills on the other side of this, and especially in the home. And today I'm going to read a couple of things to you, and I found another little golden book which I think you will really like. Okay, so this one is called The Eclectic Manual of Methods for the Assistance of Teachers. Now, one thing you have to be careful when this is about McGuffey readers, how to interpret them and how to decipher everything. But one thing you have to be careful with anything to do with teaching, with a teacher's manual, is you don't want to conduct your homeschooling as though you are a teacher. You're a mother, and you're the authority over your children, and you're the nurturer. And so they need to see you as someone who's kind and loving and nurturing, and they will want to learn if you're like that, and if you're delighted in them, if you love them, if you are excited about what they say and what they do in all their ways, and you're not harsh. Harsh mothers who are too often harsh can breed problems later on, especially depression. Now, so I want to talk to you about McGuffey's what it says about McGuffey's Fourth Reader. Now, you know, McGuffey's Fourth Reader was my favorite. It was the one that had so many interesting stories in it, Susie's composition, and it also had elocution in the front. So I want to read the paragraph on how to teach McGuffey's Fourth Reader about the elocution part. I think it's interesting. 16 pages of the introductory matter of the Fourth Reader are devoted to exercise in articulation and vocal culture. These exercises could not be gone over once and then dropped, but vocal culture should have a place in each day's exercise. A critic in writing of this point says, nearly all teachers in our common schools. Now, common school was a school that the poor children went to, and it was often taught by the mothers, or somebody would hire, money was pooled together in a community and they hired a teacher. And there are many stories written about the adventures of some of these teachers. One of them was called Tisha, T-I-S-H-A. I don't know if you can still get that book, but it was just a little novel, the true story of a woman who went to teach the Eskimos in Alaska. Interesting. Nearly all teachers in our common schools teach reading, but the training is confined chiefly to the eye. Reading is confined to the eye, okay? Something is done in expression, but it is incidental, and few ever attempt anything that looks to the development of the voice. See, that's what I wish I had had, is voice training. My education in public school in the 1950s did not have the depth that, like, for instance, the 1940s. My father was very, very smart, and he and my mother only had like one of them has claimed that they'd had a 6th grade education, the other one claimed he'd had an 8th grade education, and then later on took college courses at night school. But their understanding and their knowledge and their skills were so much greater than the generation that I grew up in. While it is not necessary that a teacher himself be a skilled elocutionist in order to attempt such development, yet he certainly should have correct ideas of the vocal organs and of the proper way to train them. Now, here's the name of a book I've never heard of. Murdoch's Analytic Elocution, which contains the best method known for this purpose, ought to be studied by every teacher of reading who is deficient in a knowledge of the art of elocution. So this is really important. You know, I was thinking about some of the words that we speak and how people will think that we say something. One of the best elocution videos that I used to watch was by a Russian lady who came to America and was trying to teach people how to speak in an American accent. And she observed some things that I had never thought of. And for instance, we don't say butter, B-U-D-D-E-R. We say butter, and we roll the T off of the top of the roof of our mouth. We say butter. And so a lot of people will come and think that we are saying it with a D. We are not. We don't say butter with a D. It's a soft D at the top of at the roof of your mouth, but you roll it slightly. And then she also mentioned in one of these videos how English will often take two words and put them together and slur them slightly together. You wouldn't stop at you wouldn't stop in the middle of a sentence. You wouldn't stop. So she would take these and slur them together. It's so interesting. And I think elocution should be a big career for somebody. Some of you mothers ought to really do well in that. And after your children are grown and you've already homeschooled them, then you can go on and tutor other children in elocution. Now, I want to read something very important from a book called Schott's Original, is it Miscellany? I'll try to remember to put the names of these books here. And this is George Washington's Rules. Now, a lot of you didn't know George Washington was a boy once, and he wrote by the time he was 14. In his 14th or 15th year, the young George Washington kept a commonplace book. Well, we know what commonplace books are, don't we? I've encouraged you all to get some paper and tie it with string or ribbon and make a commonplace book. Write down sayings you hear, write down verses you like, write down thoughts. And so he kept a commonplace book, but you can find a lot of commonplace books in pioneer museums. He kept a commonplace book he entitled Forms of Writing. Among other miscellaneous items, this book contained a list of 110 rules of civility and decent behavior in company and conversation. Many writers, including Washington Irving, have discussed the possible source of these maxims, and it seems likely that they originate from the work of the 16th century French. A few of the rules are quoted below, with the hope that they will do more than amuse the reader by their quaintness. Now, we call them quaint, but some of them are pretty good. Every action done in company ought to be with some sign of respect to those who are present. When in company, put not your hands to any part of the body not usually discovered. Sleep not when others speak. Sit not when others stand. Speak not when you should hold your peace. You know what hold your peace means? Do you know, you watch these old westerns and the lawman comes and he says, hold your peace. And it means be peaceful and don't shoot me. Hold your peace. That's an old saying. We should bring it back. Hold your peace. Walk not when others stop. Have you ever been with someone and they were talking, or you were talking, and they just walked away from you? Do not puff up the cheeks, loll out the tongue, and rub the hands. Thrust out the lips, or bite them, or keep the lips too open or too closed. Let your countenance be pleasant, but in serious matters somewhat grave. Show not yourself glad at the misfortune of another, though he were your enemy. That is something, that I think that's biblical too. It's not good to rejoice at the calamity of other people, even if they're bad. Superfluous compliments and all affectation of ceremony are to be avoided, yet where due, when they are not to be neglected. In visiting the sick, do not presently play the physician if you be not knowing therein. Oh yeah, don't you get tired if you tell somebody, where were you? You didn't come to church. Well, I've been sick. I had a bit of a headache. Oh, well, I recommend this and this and this, and pretty soon they are amateur doctors. And I always tell Mr. S, if I'm not well and I don't show up in church, please do not announce that I am sick, because then I get all these phone calls of people wanting to be the doctors. When a man does all he can, though it succeeds not well, blame not him that did it. Wherein you reprove another, be unblameable yourself, for example is more prevalent than precepts. Play not the peacock, looking everywhere about you to see if you be well decked, if your shoes fit well, or your stockings. Sit neatly, and clothes handsomely. Associate yourself with men of good quality, if you esteem your own reputation, for 'tis better to be alone than in bad company. Be not immodest in urging your friends to discover a secret. Gaze not at the marks or blemishes of others, and ask not how they came. What you may speak in secret to your friend, deliver not before others. Treat with men at fit times about business, and whisper not in the company of others. Be not tedious in discourse or in reading, unless you find the company pleased therewith. In company of those of higher quality that yourself speak, not until you are asked a question. Then stand upright, foot of your hat, and answer in a few words. Make no show of taking great delight in your victuals. Feed not with greediness. Cut your bread with a knife. Lean not on the table, and find fault with what you eat. You know, that's really depressing, isn't it? You serve this nice meal, and you're getting ready, and somebody says something really awful about it. I was taught well, we grew up in a large family, and I was taught we do not say anything bad about the food at all. If you don't like it, you don't eat it, but you don't say, this is disgusting, I'm not going to eat it, because it puts others off of their appetite. You don't say anything bad about the food. If you don't want it, you be quiet, you leave it on your plate, or don't take it at all in the first place. If others talk at table, be sensitive, but talk not with meat in your mouth. When you speak of God or his attributes, let it be seriously and with words of reverence. Honor and obey your natural parents, although they be poor. Let your recreations be manful, not sinful. Labor to keep, I love this, is my favorite one. I'd like to have this on a plaque. I should put it up. Labor to keep alive in your breast the little spark of celestial fire called conscience. I just love the way he worded that. As apparently these commonplace books, they were not the original. The person that copied them, they were little copybooks. The person that copied them did not necessarily make them up, but found the best of everything that they read and wrote them down in commonplace books. I started a commonplace newsletter and sent it around to a few friends, and they made some of their own, and they're just beautiful. I just love them. But I think you should have your own commonplace newsletter just for your family, at least for the record. Now I have another book to read to you. Oh, it's a little golden book. It's called The Store-Bought Doll. I want everything in it. The Store-Bought Doll. This is just lovely. You see this picture? I want that house back there, and I want that dress. I don't think I want the plow, though. But I just think it's just lovely, the scenery. I love the painting. Once there was a girl named Christina who lived on a farm with her mother and father. Christina had a red and white rubber ball. She had a skipping rope and a calico beanbag. Best of all, she had a rag doll named Lucy that her mother had made for her. There's the rag doll. I am considering making one of these. Every morning, Christina helped milk the cow and feed the chickens. Then she helped dry the dishes and sweep the kitchen. And every afternoon, Christina played with Lucy and gave Lucy rides in the old wheelbarrow. She had tea parties with Lucy. They used walnut shells for cups. Have you ever done that? Used walnut shells for teacups and little flat rocks for pretend cookies. She climbed the apple tree with Lucy and told her special secrets. Every single night after she ate supper and she had a bath, Christina took Lucy to bed with her. She hugged Lucy and held her tight until they both fell asleep. One day a man came to Christina's house. He was wearing a fine suit and a silk tie. "I'm having trouble with my automobile," he told Christina's father. "May I borrow some tools?" "Of course," said Christina's father. "Maybe I can help you too." He got his toolbox from the shed, and he and the man went down the road to fix the car. A little while later, Christina's father and the man drove up in a shiny automobile. "Thank you again," said the man, as Christina's father got out of the car. "Glad I could help," said her father. The next day the man in the automobile came back. "You were so kind to help me yesterday," he said. "I wanted to give you something in return, so I bought a present for your little girl." It was a china doll. It had blue eyes that opened and closed, and yellow silky hair, and rosy cheeks and lips. It had on a pink satin dress with pearl buttons and real leather slippers. Christina could hardly believe her eyes. "It's so beautiful. I never had a real store-bought doll before. Thank you." While the grown-ups sat on the porch and drank lemonade, Christina ran off to play with her new doll. She left Lucy lying in a heap on the steps. There's the picture of her running off with the new doll and the old doll lying on the steps. Christina brushed the doll's silky yellow hair. She unbuttoned all the pearl buttons on the pink dress. Then she buttoned them up. She rocked the doll in her arms and watched its eyes close and open. But she couldn't give the china doll a ride in the wheelbarrow because she was afraid the pink satin dress would get dirty. She couldn't have a tea party with the china doll because she was afraid of the walnut shells and the rock cookies would scratch its rosy cheeks and lips. She couldn't climb the apple tree with the china doll because she was afraid the doll would fall and break. I'll just give you a picture of her looking up into the apple tree with that doll. Trying to look at the wheelbarrow, not wanting to put the doll in there. Late in the afternoon, Christina stood on the porch with her mother and father and waved goodbye to the man as he drove away. And that night, after she ate supper and had a bath, Christina put the beautiful china doll in a corner of the room, and then she crept downstairs and picked up dear Lucy, and she took Lucy to bed and held her tighter than ever until they both fell asleep. I thought you'd like that story. It's also, these little golden books, these older ones. Now, that not all little golden books were good. Some of them had some weird stories, but if you're discerning, you can pick out the classics, the good ones, to teach children how to think and how to play and how to view something, how to think about something. My Bible number book. Now, the reason I liked this was I remembered my mother-in-law. She kept a folded up piece of paper in her purse, and on one side was the numbers from 1 to 10, and on the other side was the alphabet, and beside each number was something in the Bible to do with that number, so that she could and besides each letter of the alphabet was something in the Bible that started with that, like A was for Adam, it started with that, with that letter, so that she always had. And the idea was to have all these lessons that she could just teach at a moment and just fold it up in one piece of paper tucked in a little pocket in her purse. And if she was called on to teach children at any time, like for instance they had company and her husband was talking to them and they had children, she could roll that out and teach it. They also had classes in the church that if there were children that wanted to attend, they could come to the Bible classes. And they were just the Bible classes, but so it was a marvelous piece of paper, it had all these interesting things in it. It didn't rhyme or anything, but it just familiarized children with the Bible. Okay, so this first one is my Bible number book. I guess I got this for my daughter. Jesus told a story about a shepherd who had 100 sheep. This is about the 90 and 9. Remember that song? There were 90 and 9 that safely lay in the shelter of the fold. One day, as the shepherd counted his sheep, he could find only 99, and one was lost. The shepherd left the 99 sheep and went to look for the one that was lost. He was very happy when he found him. How many sheep were lost? 5,000 men and the women and children were hungry. They had been listening to Jesus all day. Only one little boy had something to eat. In his lunch were 5 small loaves of bread and 2 fish. He gave his lunch to Jesus. Jesus blessed the food, and there was enough to feed everyone. How many fish did he have? 2. So we've done for one lost lamb and 2 fish. After Jesus was born, some wise men came to worship him, and they gave him 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. How many gifts did the wise men give Jesus? 3. Now, these 3 gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. I read somewhere that the gold was to help him get started in his life and provide for his career, which would have been in carpentry. And the frankincense was something to do with his kingliness. The gold was for his kingliness. The frankincense had something to do with prayer. And the myrrh was for his burial. Not sure if I got that right, but could look that up. A crippled man wanted to be made well, but he could not walk to Jesus. 4 friends said they would carry him. Jesus made the man well. How many friends carried the crippled man to Jesus? 4. David was going to fight the giant Goliath. He bent down in the brook and picked up 5 smooth stones. David put one of the stones in his sling. He threw the stone and hit Goliath. How many stones did David pick up? 5. So it just goes on to 10. Should I finish reading it to you? Jesus went to a wedding in Cana. The people ran out of wine. Jesus asked the servants to fill up the 6 stone water pots with water. The servants obeyed. Jesus changed the water in the water pots to wine. This was his first miracle. How many water pots did the servants fill with water? And they have where the child can count them. And on each page, it shows like how many friends carried Jesus, and you can count them. The illustrations are for counting. And like David's stones, it has the 5 small stones there that they can count. God told Joshua to have the Israelite people march around the city of Jericho. While they marched, 7 priests blew their trumpets. They marched around the city 1 time each day for 6 days. On the 7th day, they marched around the city 7 times. Well, that sounds like a puzzle. We did that one time for the children when we were reading this account in the Old Testament, and had them walk around the house, and we tried to imitate it to see what that would be like. It's a lot of fun. And that's part of homeschooling, is making these accounts and the history come alive. How many priests blew their trumpets? 7, and they have the 7 priests there. That reminds me of that song, the Lord told Joshua to go to Jericho and to march 7 times around. Noah built an ark just like God said. He filled it with animals and birds. Then Noah and his wife, along with their 3 sons and their wives, walked into the ark. God closed the door. Noah and his family were safe and dry. How many people went into the ark? 8. One day Jesus met 10 men who had leprosy. They called out, "Master, have mercy on us." Jesus healed the 10 men. They were very happy. 9 of the men forgot to say thank you. Only 1 man returned to say thank you to Jesus. How many men forgot to say thank you? They can count them too. 9. Jesus told a story about 10 girls. They were going to a wedding. Each of the girls carried a lamp. 5 wise girls took an extra bottle of oil. 5 foolish girls did not. How many girls carried a lamp? And they have a picture of it here. So then they have all the pictures of everything here in the end. Anyway, that's a very old book you might like. So ladies, I hope this has been profitable to you. I wish I had brought my map book. I was going to teach you a little bit about maps, but we'll do a better job next time. And I hope you got a lot done, and I hope that you will keep your alertness and use this life that you have to be happy and to accomplish what you wish to accomplish and to thrive. So I see you next time. Bye.